Episode 1 of The Devil's Hour Season 2 starts with Lucy's mum out in the rain. Dressed in white, Sylvia heads back to her house after being lost in thought, unlocks a closet and grabs her gun. A letter on the table is addressed to Lucy, and just like that, Sylvia pulls the trigger. And the time, yep, is 3:33 AM. Fast forward to Lucy as a teen, and she still hasn't opened her suicide note. She's staying with foster parents who she doesn't get on with very well. She speaks to Dr. Bennett in therapy about her feelings of bitter resentment, and it's here she opens a letter and begins to read through. This crashes her resolve as Lucy lashes out and curses. As the tears flow, Bennett is there to comfort her before Lucy heads off and scatters her mum's ashes, gaining some form of closure around this. Lucy's life changes though when she tries to steal some cheap booze from the local convenience store. In the police car, she speaks to none other than Nick Holness. This is, of course, the detective who worked with Ravi in Season 1. Here he admits that being a cop has its perks. He's pretty impressed by Lucy's deduction skills and believes she'd be a better detective than he is. This sets off a chain of events where Lucy becomes a detective, only she's not so great with her people skills. She's single, as is her partner Ravi, but the pair start to grow closer together. Lucy is consumed by her work though, and she's constantly trying to find a pattern to what's happening around her. The next day, 2 kids go missing. Amanda Milton and Margot Jackson disappear at around 5 PM, and nobody seems to have any information. However, this is where the red Nissan ties into the case. The footage last seen with the kids includes this red Nissan as well. Tragedy strikes again that night. This time it's Shane Fisher who's arrested for killing his wife, and Lucy is shook up when she's almost killed with the knife he's carrying. This is also the same night that Gideon kills Harold Slade, the man stabbed 3 times in the first episode of Season 1. Only the timeline is different this time around, and it soon becomes clear how. Brief shots of Gideon soon pave way for us meeting Isaac for the first time in this episode. Lucy doesn't recognise her own son, and of course this timeline is very different from the one we saw last season. Isaac refuses to leave Lucy's side though and struggles to let go of her hand, which he holds in the car for as long as he can. When Ravi turns the radio on though, Isaac inexplicably disappears. Ravi tries to find him, wandering through the woods, and ends up at an abandoned house. As for Lucy, she's distracted as she watches the body brought in from the lake. The only clue they have to go on is a red Nissan, which eventually brings in Harold Slade. This red Nissan belongs to Gideon, and Lucy soon realises that everything is connected. She organises a hit on where she believes Gideon to be and finds the car for herself. Lucy deduces that there's another car Gideon is using given the nearby petrol can, and that is of course absolutely correct. After swiftly dispatching Ravi, Lucy catches up with Gideon. He brings up how there will be 17 dead bodies, 11 of which children, the following year. Gideon also knows exactly what she's going to say, but the turning point appears to be this police interview. Gideon tells her he's going to stay alive this time. He's doing this for her as he wants to work together. He'll be ready when she's willing to speak. Lucy is called out that night to the house fire at the Warrens' place. If you'll remember, this is the house she initially was staying in with Isaac in Season 1. Lucy seems to sense this and gets a horrible case of deja vu, which is where we left off in Season 1 with that cliffhanger. Lucy heads round to the garden and finds Isaac in the playhouse. Well, I say she finds him, but when she opens up the play doors, he's not inside. Spooked, Lucy shows up at the hospital where Ravi is recovering. She kisses him and the pair finally do decide to get together. Eventually, they tie the knot. When Lucy's health takes a turn for the worst, Lucy shows up at the prison and speaks to Gideon. Gideon promises to save her mother's life, which seems to be the catalyst for where all of this started. But after that, Lucy is going to surrender to the chaos and it'll wake her up. In doing so, she'll lose everything in this life. Similarly though, she may be able to save all those who died. Lucy, on her deathbed, promises to find Ravi again. As she passes away, Lucy claims to hear music, and this inevitably brings us to the Season 1 timeline. Lucy wakes up in hospital following the house fire that knocked her out, but this time she remembers Ravi as her husband. Episode 2 of The Devil's Hour Season 2 starts with a look at the Watson family. They're expecting a child and things seem to be going okay for them, except for Ben's broccoli haircut of course. However, a shocking explosion at a toy store blasts a couple, and 14 others, away. As the camera pans across the floor, we centre on an eerie, smiley face from atop of the sunflower toy we saw Isaac play with in Season 1. This is also another reminder of Gideon's warning a year earlier, promising these exact number of deaths. Meanwhile, Lucy has been struggling with Isaac lately too. He hasn't seen Mike since the fire, and Isaac's nightmares are getting worse. Lucy speaks to Dr. Bennett about her concerns and she wants our DI to come to one-on-one sessions. Now, something worth noting here is that there's a little girl behind the yellow curtains while they're talking and nobody mentions her. This could well be an important clue later, but for now it's not really mentioned. Lucy and Isaac head to their new house out in the woods. A bang from the distance suddenly sees Isaac bring up that he shouldn't be here. He's scared of the ghosts, and despite Lucy's insistence that they're okay, we know better than that given how this show has played out thus far. Ravi shows up to see Boyd and they immediately head to the nearby school. This is where Isaac goes to, and he seems to be experiencing more than one reality at a time. He sees his teacher in multiple places, but he doesn't cross paths with the officers outside, who hand over their business card to her and leave. Meanwhile, Gideon uncovers a tiny lockbox from the dirt near a skate park. After swiftly dispatching a gang of teens that circle him after, he heads off to parts unknown. Ravi receives a call about this not long after, asking for his help, but of course he's not the only one who knows this case inside out. Lucy hears the news on the radio and subsequently visits Gideon. He reveals that the police have been looking for him since he was 9 years old and nothing seems to change. This time though, we know roughly who this person is, given the yellow hoodie. They just need to put a face to this man, and then hopefully stop the bombing. Gideon struggles with his visions through all of this, seeing multiple different timelines in one. He opens up the lockbox, which has memories of his past, and a screw too. Gideon is shocked when Lucy returns with Sylvia, who's in a bad state at the special care facility she's staying in, so naturally she's going to stay here instead. Gideon saved her of course, but he makes it clear that Sylvia's mind seems to be rejecting her. Gideon warns that this is a wrong move, bringing Sylvia to the house, and reminds Lucy that he's a killer. Lucy isn't afraid of him though, and she's even using the same tactics he is to get by without a job. Remember, Gideon mentioned to her in the finale that he gambled on sports results as a way of making sure they never struggled with money. Ravi does his homework and finds Lucy and Isaac in their house out in the woods. The pair get along well until Gideon gets brought into the conversation. Ravi admits that he's afraid, given Gideon beat him to a pulp and he even has a taser in his car now too. Ravi tried to visit Lucy while she was in hospital, but after the fire his boss wouldn't let him. Lucy is a little awkward, partly thanks to her split visions and simultaneously starting to remember Ravi as her husband in the previous timeline. He stays for dinner that night and Lucy jokes how she prefers men with beards. After tucking Isaac into bed, he comments how she's happy and that she should kiss Ravi given they get on so well. Ravi happens to be in the living room and looks through Lucy's journal, which details specific points of the case. Lucy spots him and after explaining it away as a dream diary, the pair kiss, which brings up flashes of their previous life together. Ravi is bang on the case though, and he remains fixated on a name from the diary, Evelyn Wiseman, who is, as you may remember, the person who Gideon saved in season 1. As the pair spend time together, Lucy is in for a big surprise. She does a pregnancy test and it's positive. Episode 3 of The Devil's Hour season 2 starts with a burning car. Lucy heads out to examine it with Nick Holness. It seems someone has stolen this Subaru and then destroyed it. Lucy gets the gang on the case while we see Sam Boyd working as a forensic investigator, revealing that she's found a footprint. We then cut across to our current timeline, where Gideon watches the same blue car before it's bombed. He set up a camera across the street, but he's remaining vigilant. There's a 10k reward out for Gideon's arrest, meaning he can't leave to try and finish this. He needs Lucy's help. Outside, Gideon bumps into Sylvia around 3:30 AM. After a bit of a fright, he sits down with her at the table and points out that a man on the sofa asleep that she's seeing isn't there. He's an echo. Gideon shows off his tin box, which is actually his way of pushing back against the chaos as it bleeds through. Gideon explains that this helps to keep him grounded and remember where he's from. The tin cycles between being empty and full, signifying the two different timelines bleeding together. Gideon encourages Sylvia to find her anchor, and this could well explain what's happening with her. Out in the garden, Gideon finds what she's buried. He brings the bag in and Lucy uncovers the shotgun. The same shotgun that Sylvia shot herself with in the other reality. Gideon is unnerved and tells Lucy that in exchange for Sylvia staying there, she needs to be bang on the case. That means tracking down this bomber and doing what needs to be done. Back home, Isaac and Lucy have little fake tattoos on their arm. While a seemingly innocent gesture, Isaac's is of a butterfly and Lucy ends up with a smiley face flower. Again, this is another nod to the other timelines. Meanwhile, Ravi and Sam do some digging and find an old video of Evelyn Wiseman on a program about the unexplained. The date of this is the exact date that Gideon mentioned in his interviews. Boyd believes Lucy is a suspect here, given the connection to this name, but Ravi is conflicted. His personal interest is definitely getting in the way here. As for Lucy, she heads to the park where she finds numerous ducks dead, thanks to our killer who threw bits of bread with shards of glass inside earlier in episode 2. Isaac notices this as well and decides they should leave, but on the way out, Lucy is shocked when she notices the Watson couple sitting on a bench. This is obviously prior to the explosion at the toy store. The blue Subaru moves from its location that night, prompting Gideon to ring Lucy at 3:33 AM. Gideon believes she should impersonate a police officer, given she used to be one, and uncover the thief by speaking to the Subaru owner, who's currently in hospital. Lucy is skittish as she shows up at the hospital the next day to see Jack Graham. Jack recognises the thief, given Gideon earlier managed to print out a photo from his hidden camera. This guy's name is Steve Dunn, but as Lucy leaves, he warns that the man is a proper psycho. Is this the killer that we're looking for? At the same time, Ravi and Sam Boyd show up to see Greg Wiseman, who happens to be Evelyn's father. The last time he saw Evelyn was on the 21st of November 1986, and she then just left. She disappeared. Evelyn mentioned getting away from the echoes and disappearing to somewhere far away and quiet, but they have no idea where to look. Now this place that's far away is recognisable to Boyd, given there's a painting of a house near to where they are. She deduces that it could be the old house on the moor we've been hearing about. Meanwhile, Dr. Bennett decides to do some therapy with Isaac. When she turns on the radio though, he disappears completely. Lucy shows up at the door and Isaac reappears. This catches Bennett off guard and she's definitely rattled. When Lucy takes Isaac home, she promises she has one more thing to do, and that comes from stopping our murderer. If this is Steve Dunn, of course. Lucy hurriedly searches for his belongings at his place that night while he's out. There are boxes of knockoff trainers, while the laptop holds nothing. Just nothing out of the ordinary and nothing linked to the toy store. Now, it does appear that Dunn is selling this car to someone called French for cash at the car park, and then it hits Lucy. They have the wrong man. This is because Lucy is getting her timelines mixed up. While this is going on, Isaac struggles with his visions. He's out with the Warrens playing I Spy that night when he hears the guttural growls of a dog nearby. Isaac disappears out of view for an instant and in his absence is bitten by a dog. When he reappears, Isaac tells the shocked Warren family that it was Lucy who saved him. Chaos ensues at Steve's place when he spots Lucy after returning home. Steve Dunn comes at her with a hammer, but Lucy, sporting a shotgun of all weapons, shoots him dead. Episode 4 of The Devil's Hour Season 2 starts with us shifting perspectives over to our faraway place. Evelyn keeps a diary for herself, but she too is experiencing multiple echoes. All of this changes though when the radio announces an explosion at Rigby's Toys. As she starts to slip, we cut back to Gideon and Lucy. Now Lucy is in a state of shock after Dunn's death and struggling to figure out how to resolve this. Gideon talks her out of calling in a bomb threat to the police and tries to help her handle the killing. He knows what needs to be done and there's no turning back now. She can't go back, and with Isaac staying at the Warren house, Gideon tells her they need to stay close and lie low. This whole plan is thrown out of whack though when Debbie Warren rings with word of Isaac's strange dog attack. While Lucy brings him back with her, Sam and Ravi are called to the Dunn murder scene. They found hair samples and notice a shotgun blast, but Ravi receives another thread in the form of faraway farmhouse. Boyd has discovered it's 40 miles out from Birmingham and could be a crucial clue in this investigation. We then jump across to the long-awaited chat between Gideon and Isaac. Gideon brings up that dogs have an extra sense and can see things that aren't there, like the echoes. He points out that he killed a dog a year back because it was broken, and the dog that bit Isaac? Well, Gideon believes it may well be the one that lived in the other timeline. It caught the scent of another life that didn't exist, and this explains why the dog initially bit him. Ravi has flashes to the other life too, this time of him proposing to Lucy, and the location, none other than the bench they constantly sit at. This is the same photo that Sylvia had hanging up in her care facility that she was staring at in episode 2, despite us believing that she's staring at the wall. Now Ravi rings and brings up Evelyn Wiseman, questioning how the two of them are connected. It catches Lucy off guard, and as she says goodbye, she says I love you, which seems to splinter through realities. Gideon is shocked, given he saved Evelyn from the car crash in season 1, and this could well undo everything they've been working towards. She too can change timelines of course, and if she tells the police about Rigby's toy store, then it's all over. Gideon is concerned because death is a better outcome to what could come to pass. The worst outcome here? Well, it's not prison, but they could pump the pair of them so full of drugs that it numbs their minds, making them forget everything. Gideon takes off with a shotgun, but Lucy is conflicted. She speaks to Ravi and throws out that she's pregnant. Lucy also explains their connection, including intimate details that only she would know. Ravi's life starts to unravel and he decides, after all of this, that he's going to visit that farmhouse for himself. Meanwhile, Boyd chases up the Subaru lead. Isaac's school teacher, Elena Rogers, phones and reveals Isaac is missing from school. She believes there's a history of abuse here given Isaac's weird injuries over the years and knows the family are hiding something. Unfortunately, things are made that much more difficult when Boyd is on Lucy's trail after she shows up at the hospital and Boyd sees the surveillance footage for herself. Back at the house though, Isaac speaks to Sylvia. He sits with her on the bed, holding his watch while also holding her hand, and this somehow wakes her up. At the same time, Gideon shows up at Evelyn's farmhouse and sees the sketches of the toy store on the table. He urges her to pack up everything, including her anchors and keepsakes. Evelyn though is starting to lose control and doesn't want to leave. She knows that something is wrong as this timeline isn't supposed to play out this way. Gideon agrees to take her somewhere safe though and manages to calm her down enough to leave. On the way out the house, they bump into Ravi and Lucy on the way up. Lucy jumps in the way of Ravi's taser, protecting Gideon. However, the latter shoots Ravi's tyres and takes off with Evelyn. Lucy promises to explain everything to him, bringing up the bombing that's going to take place in the future. She also warns that if they intervene now, they won't be able to stop it. Things take a turn for the worse though when Lucy miscarries her child. Ravi joins her in hospital as she starts crying. As they hug, Ravi has flashes to their future together, revealing suddenly that their child would have been called Amir. However, in the time Ravi heads off to get a cup of coffee, Lucy is gone. Boyd rings and Ravi gives the green light for her to check the blood and DNA found at Dunn's crime scene. Unfortunately, she gets too involved and follows Lucy out to the house they're staying in. Lucy is shocked to find her mum is back and Isaac explains that he made her better. Unfortunately, everything comes undone though when Sam Boyd shows up. She's followed Lucy back here and looks set to arrest her. However, Gideon sneaks up from behind and knocks her out. Episode 5 of The Devil's Hour Season 2 starts with Gideon and Lucy back in prison. She wants Gideon to wake her up and when it's done, they never speak again. She wants a fresh start and to make her own way in life. Gideon agrees and they part ways. We then cut across to another visit at the prison. Gideon underlines 3:33 AM in his journal and is taken aback when he receives a very unexpected visitor. Gideon comments how he isn't supposed to be here, and as the camera pans down, we see that he's wearing a blue watch. The man leans forward and smirks, pointing out that a chaos spat him out after messing with time. This is, of course, Isaac, and he tells Gideon that all their lives are impossible. He also wants to know why he killed Lucy Chambers. We then cut back and see our killer setting up the bomb ready to go off. He fills the backpack with screws, nails, and anything else he can find. As the timer starts to tick down, we cut across to Lucy as she makes some food for Boyd, who's tied up to the bed. Lucy struggles to get through to her, pleading with Boyd to remember. However, that's the least of their issues right now. Gideon and Lucy work together to destroy their evidence. She doesn't want to go any further with this, but Gideon reminds her that it never ends. Isaac is convinced that bad things are going to happen, but Lucy promises him that she's going to fix it. Ravi heads off to the familiar bench from his past and continues to try and recover his fractured memories. Part of that includes finding out that a toy store bombing is going to take place at 11 AM. So off he goes, racing to the toy store. Meanwhile, Dr. Bennett listens to the voice recording from her session with Isaac. This time though, we get some clarity over who that girl was behind the curtain. Within the recording, Bennett calls her Amelia and talks to the girl, which is completely different from what she remembers taking place with Isaac. Did she also slip without realizing? That seems to be where we're going with this, as Bennett looks up and notices the flower vase has changed from real flowers to paper ones. This is again something Isaac mentioned in his session with her earlier in the season, and here we see Bennett shocked and taken aback by this revelation. Lucy heads to the toy store and remains fixated on the task at hand, while back home, Sylvia tries to fix Isaac's watch. Evelyn, however, starts to slip. She hears voices cascading around her and the mirror changes to show someone else in the reflection. Unfortunately, this brings her upstairs where she finds Sam Boyd. Boyd manipulates her and tells Evelyn that she's also been hearing the voices and claims that they want her to let Boyd go. Evelyn does so, while Isaac hides in the closet. Sylvia feigns being in her catatonic state again until Boyd leaves. However, it also ups the urgency of what's about to take place too. Meanwhile, Lucy finds a backpack stuffed on the main floor of the toy store. However, it's not the right one and she's spotted rooting through it and forced to flee. With things unraveling, she tells Gideon to take over the investigation. Just then, she receives a call from Isaac. He tells her that he and Sylvia have left to head under the bridge, a familiar one from the past where they used to play poo sticks, and that Boyd is out. Lucy is frantic and tries to figure out what to do. Gideon, meanwhile, sees the man in the yellow hoodie head into the toy store. He's out of time, and this coincides with Ravi heading inside too and informing the owner that they need to evacuate because of a bomb threat. He manages to get the people out, but the killer spots Ravi. We don't get a chance to see his face though, as he stabs Ravi multiple times, leaving the knife inside him and rushing off. Gideon scrambles over to Ravi and in turn learns what direction the killer has raced off to. Gideon gives chase, but unfortunately the killer is smart and tracks him down. He smacks Gideon upside the head from behind and takes off. Ravi, meanwhile, bleeds to death right there in a toy store after seeing vivid imagery of his life with Lucy flash before his eyes. Unfortunately, they don't stop the bomb from going off. Police show up to see Evelyn and arrest her, while Lucy regroups with Isaac and Sylvia. She grabs her stuff and prepares to leave, knowing time is of the essence. Unfortunately, police show up at the door led by Boyd. She arrests Lucy, who apologizes to Isaac. Tellingly, the map she tried to burn earlier on is in the sink and still very much intact. As Lucy and Isaac embrace, they're inexplicably brought to this alternate timeline he visits. This explains why he keeps disappearing and reappearing, and he does so here to save Lucy. She finds herself freezing cold and struggles to even get away from their initial spot. Lucy eventually blinks out, clutching her head in pain as she falls to the ground, and then it stops. The police are still at the house and Lucy is back outside. She manages to get away, having blinked back into the same timeline. Boyd is incredulous over how all of this has gone down, but Sylvia points out that Isaac is a special boy. He feels like a memory and a promise and a wish. Sylvia knows he's exactly where he's supposed to be. Dr. Bennett shows up to see Lucy and Isaac while all this is happening. They need to get away, but they're not alone. Gideon arrives in his truck and explains that he could, and should, have been killed, but the killer kept him alive for reasons. They can't use the roads and they need to slip away using any means necessary. Lucy explains that they need to keep Isaac away in order to stop him. He promises that everything will be okay, and as they part ways, we cut to the police racing to find the pair. However, they're cornered in the farmhouse. Gideon explains that Ravi is dead and they're out of time. The only way out is to reset the timeline, so Gideon picks up the shotgun and shoots Lucy. We then cut to black, assuming that Gideon killed himself, but we have our doubts, and we jump across to Isaac in the wheat field. Dr. Bennett is there with Debbie Warren and they watch as Isaac hasn't spoken since Lucy has died. The Warrens are determined to make him part of the family, but what of Isaac? Well, he's suddenly interrupted by a familiar voice, and as he looks over, Isaac is shocked to see what appears to be Lucy Chambers. So the finale of The Devil's Hour rolls round and it's becoming increasingly clear that whoever the killer is, it's someone we know. There are several different possibilities here, but personally, my money is it being Isaac. This would explain why he can't follow Lucy and Gideon and how he's always one step ahead of the case. It also explains why he didn't kill Gideon when he had the chance, given he helped him embrace the timeline changes. Of course, this is all a working theory right now, so take what I'm saying with a pinch of salt. I'm sure we're going to be shocked over how this will play out in season 3, which has already been greenlit by the way, and the beginning scenes with an older Isaac showing up at the hospital are clearly a show that in this timeline, Gideon doesn't kill himself and Isaac grows up resentful and visits him in prison. Isaac is the key here, it would seem, and it would explain why the dogs are so violent towards him. Isaac being the killer is the most likely outcome I've come to, but again, there are other theories floating around here. It could also be Jonah, given we saw Evelyn scribble down his name, or attempt to before she was arrested. And of course this, coupled with the sketch of a teddy bear that was in episode 4 if you'll remember, could well be little hints towards the fact that the man in the yellow hoodie could be Jonah. Or it could be someone else entirely. We'll just have to wait and see, I guess. But the show has been a solid watch, albeit slightly confusing at times, and the second season just as endearing as the first. There are plenty of twists and turns here, and as I said earlier, with season 3 already filmed and confirmed, we thankfully don't have to wait too long to get a definitive conclusion over how this one will play out. Thanks for watching, and do let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Smash a like or subscribe to the channel, your support is very much appreciated. I'm Greg Wheeler, and from all of us over here at The Review Geek, we'll see you on the next video.